You are looking at a field that has never seen chemical fertilizer. The Amish in Lancaster County have farmed it for 3 centuries, and it still out-yields any conventional field. The secret: 4 things your grandfather used, and a principle proven in 1940. A principle the fertilizer industry buried under billions in advertising. Because once you hear it, you'll know why your soil struggles, no matter what you spend. Before chemical fertilizer, farmers relied on 4 inputs: cover crops, fixed nitrogen from thin air, manure returned what harvests took, compost built living soil, wood ash unlocked minerals. That system sustained empires. In 1940, Sir Albert Howard proved it beat synthetic fertilizer. The industry buried his work. Your soil still suffers. Here's how to change that. Starting with a plant you can sow tomorrow. That plant is a legume. Peas, clover, vetch, the family of crops your great-grandfather called green manure. They do something no chemical factory has ever replicated. Through bacteria on their roots, they pull nitrogen straight from the air and lock it into the soil. 40 to 200 pounds of free nitrogen per acre, per season. Ancient Mesopotamian farmers figured out the rhythm 6,000 years before Christ. Rotate cereals with legumes. Never exhaust the ground. The Romans called it restabilis, the art of giving back. By the 8th century, European peasants had codified the 3-field system: 1 field for winter wheat, 1 for spring barley or peas, 1 fallow with livestock grazing and ropping manure. Wood ash from the hearth scattered on fields raised pH and returned potassium. Compost, heaps, transformed kitchen scraps, animal bedding, and crop residues into black, crumbly humus. It was a closed loop, a perfect cycle, and it supported civilizations for 10,000 years, without a single bag of ammonium nitrate. In 1911, an American agronomist named Franklin Hiram King traveled across China, Korea, and Japan. He documented a system feeding millions of people on the same land for 40 centuries without depleting the soil. His book, Farmers of 40 Centuries, became the Bible for a new movement. King wrote that these farmers carry out the law of return. Everything taken from the soil was given back. That book landed on the desk of a British botanist stationed in India. His name was Albert Howard, and what he did next would ignite a war with the most powerful industry on Earth. But first, the world was about to shift on its axis. In 1909, German chemist Fritz Haber unlocked a secret that would change agriculture forever. He synthesized ammonia from atmospheric nitrogen and hydrogen gas under extreme pressure and temperature. For the first time, humans could fix nitrogen without bacteria. Carl Bosch industrialized the process at BASF. By 1913, the Oppau plant was producing synthetic fertilizer. The dream was sold to farmers. More yields, less work, no mess. The Green Revolution exploded, and the old closed loop was shattered. Sir Albert Howard watched this happen. After decades of research in India, he developed the indoor composting method, a system that turned waste into soil. In 1940, he published an agricultural testament. He presented hard data. Crops grown with compost were healthier, more resistant to pests, and soil organic matter increased year after year. He wrote that pests were not the problem, poor soil was. He argued that synthetic fertilizers provided an artificial stimulus but starved soil biology, creating a cycle of dependency. The book was a direct shot at the chemical giants. The industry had a choice: embrace the law of return or crush it. They crushed it. Howard's book vanished from government recommendations. His composting stations were scrapped. The four inputs that had built every civilization for 10 millennia were dismissed as primitive. But in Lancaster County, the Amish never believed it. They kept feeding their soil the way their ancestors did 300 years ago. Cover crops, manure, compost, and wood ash. No chemicals, no erosion, no yield drag. And when you understand exactly how those four pieces work together, you will realize your own soil has been starving for them. Let me show you what each piece actually does. Cover crops are not just filler between harvests. Drop a seed of crimson clover or winter field peas in late summer after your tomatoes finish. Within weeks, a carpet of green covers the bare ground. The roots drill down, cracking compacted soil, feeding earthworms. But the magic is invisible. On those roots, tiny nodules swell with rhizobia bacteria. They crack the triple bond of atmospheric nitrogen, the strongest bond in nature, and convert it into ammonium, ready for plants. An acre of good legume cover can replace 100 pounds of synthetic nitrogen, and you never pay for it. Not once. The second input is manure, not raw hot manure that burns plants. Weathered manure, composted 6 months, turned twice, blended with straw and bedding. It supplies the phosphorus and potassium that legumes cannot make. But that's its smallest job. The true gift of manure is organic matter. A single % increase in soil organic matter lets an acre hold 20,000 more gallons of water. In a dry year, that's the difference between a dead field and a full harvest. The Amish spread 10 tons per acre every other year. Their soil reads like chocolate cake, 8% organic matter. The average American cornfield is down to 1.5%, 1.5. The ground has been bleeding for 80 years. Wood, ash is piece 3. Our ancestors knew ash of a hard maple or oak fired in a wood stove contains calcium equivalent to agricultural lime. It raises pH on acid soils, unlocking the phosphorus that acid binds tight. Ash also holds potassium, the drought-fighting nutrient. The colonists saved every barrel, every winter's worth of white powder. A half-inch spread across a garden plot in March sweetens the soil and feeds the next crop. Not one chemical required. The fourth piece is compost, and this is where Sir Albert Howard changed everything. His indoor method layered green material, animal manure, and a touch of urine-soaked earth, turned and aerated for 90 days. The finished product was not just fertilizer. It was a living inoculant. Fungal hyphae, actinobacteria, protozoa, a complete microbiome that synthetic nitrogen never provides. In Howard's trials, compost-grown wheat resisted rust fungus. Compost-fed cotton defied bollworm. He wrote that insects and disease are not the problem. They are nature's colors of the sick. Feed the soil fully, and the plant defends itself. But there is a number from a study in 2017 that puts the entire chemical era in a new light. Scientists from the University of Illinois took soil samples from the Morrow plots, the oldest experimental cornfield in America. They found that even after a century of synthetic fertilization, the soil organic matter continued to drop. The synthetic plots lost carbon every year. The only strips that held steady or gained were the ones receiving manure, and the corn yields, statistically identical. The chemicals did not outperform the old way. They just strip-mained the future, while keeping yields flat. That paper was published. The industry did not refute it. They simply ignored it. Now you might ask, if this works so well, why did every extension agent in the country push synthetic NPK for 80 years? Why did Howard's composting stations get bulldozed while billion-dollar fertilizer plants got subsidized? The answer takes us straight to the oil fields of World War II, because the same factories that turned ammonia into bombs overnight pivoted to turn ammonia into fertilizer. And after the war, those factories had to sell or die. They sold, and the four inputs your grandfather relied on were buried under a mountain of cheap ammonium nitrate and glossy brochures. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is a piece of paper from 1952 that you'll want to see, because it connects everything from Fritz Haber to the price of your groceries today. That piece of paper was the 1952 report of the President's Materials Policy Commission, known as the Paley Report. It was supposed to be about strategic minerals and timber, but buried in Chapter 10 is a single line that changed American farming forever. It stated that the nation's munitions plants, built for World War II and kept idling since Hiroshima, could be converted to fertilizer production at zero cost to the state. The same reactors that synthesized ammonia for bombs now needed a peacetime market, and the government would hand them to private industry on a silver platter. Within 5 years, 70% of America's ammonia capacity was in the hands of 6 oil and chemical corporations. The same corporations that funded land-grant university research, wrote the extension bulletins, and quietly retired every single pamphlet on composting and green manure. When you trace that money forward, the architecture becomes terrifying. The Rockefeller Foundation, born from Standard Oil profits, bankrolled the Green Revolution. They sent Norman Borlaug to Mexico with synthetic seed and synthetic fertilizer. They trained agronomists in chemical-first methodologies across India and Southeast Asia. Farms that had lived for millennia by the law of return were converted, one season at a time, into customers for imported inputs. The 4 pillars of pre-industrial fertility were now obstacles to profit. Cover crops? Unnecessary. The bag provides the nitrogen. Manure? Waste of labor. Compost? Archaic. Wood ash? Unscientific. And the yardstick of success shifted from soil health to bushels per acre, measured only by the grain that left the gate, never by the carbon that stayed behind. But the deep betrayal was yet to come. By the 1980s, the same chemical companies began acquiring seed houses: Pioneer, DeKalb, Delta Pine. They engineered hybrid and later genetically modified crops specifically to respond to synthetic fertilizer. High-response corn hybrids could absorb torrents of nitrogen, spray the chemical, harvest the yield, buy again next year. The closed loop of the farm became an open vein, and the farmer became a tenant on their own land, leasing fertility from a corporate landlord who collected rent twice, once for the seed, once for the nitrogen. The cost is not just economic. Nitrate runoff from those fields flows into the Mississippi and creates a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, the size of Connecticut. The production of 1 ton of synthetic ammonia emits nearly 2 tons of carbon dioxide. The world's fertilizer plants generate more greenhouse gas than global aviation. The soil itself, stripped of organic matter, collapses into fine dust, washing away in spring rains at 10 times the rate of regeneration. We are mining the Pleistocene, burning it in a furnace, and calling it progress. And yet, in the middle of Lancaster County, the Amish soil is dark, deep, and stable, not because they are special, but because they refused the offer. They asked one question: who benefits when a farmer must buy fertility instead of building it? And they answered it by sowing clover into their corn in late August, hauling composted manure by wagon in October, and saving wood ash through the winter. They proved that the old system still works, not just for a cabbage patch, but for a full-scale working farm. The only missing piece is you understanding how simple the rotation is. And that is exactly what I will show you next. Here is the rotation. In late August, after you pull your tomatoes or cut your corn, broadcast winter field peas and oats onto the bare ground. 1 pound of peas, 1 pound of oats per 800 square feet. Rake them in lightly. By October, you will have a knee-high carpet of green, even as the first frost bites. The peas are fixing nitrogen while their roots crack open the subsoil. The oats scavenge leftover nutrients and hold them in their stems so winter rain cannot wash them away. In early spring, when the peas start to bloom, cut the whole stand down with a scythe or mower. Let it lie for 1 week to wilt. Then fork it under shallowly, 4 inches deep, no deeper. That green mass rots fast and releases everything the next crop needs. Second, spread an inch of aged manure or finished compost. If you have wood ash from a clean hardwood fire, dust a 1/4 inch on top. That adds calcium, potassium, and a dozen trace minerals. No measuring, no math. This is what your great-grandfather called dressing the soil. Now plant your corn, your squash, your beans directly into that enriched bed. The soil will be soft enough to push a finger to the knuckle with 0 resistance. That rotation alone, cover crop plus compost plus ash, can supply the full fertility requirement of a home garden year after year. No bag, no bottle, no bill. Now you might be thinking this sounds fine for a small garden. But what about a real farm? What about scale? Here is the number that the chemical companies do not want you to run. The Rodale Institute in Pennsylvania has been running side-by-side trials since 1981. Organic plots using cover crops, composted manure, and rotations matched or exceeded conventional yields in corn and soybeans. But the kicker came in drought years. The organic plots yielded 30% more because their soil held nearly twice as much water. The conventional soil had been so stripped of organic matter it could not hold a rain. The chemicals had hollowed it out from the inside. And when fuel prices spike, the organic system pulls ahead even further because it uses 45% less energy per bushel. So the old way is not just cleaner, it is tougher, cheaper in real terms, and it does not collapse when the weather turns bad. And this is the detail that made me stop cold. After the 1952 Paley Report converted bomb factories to fertilizer factories, the USDA buried its own research on green manures. My own state, Ohio, had a publication in 1938 titled Cover Crops for Soil Improvement. It listed 22 species, seeding rates, and plowdown dates. By 1960, it was out of print, not updated, not replaced, deleted. The knowledge that had built American topsoil was withdrawn from public access, quietly, without a vote, without a hearing. The same agency that subsidizes cover crops today spent 40 years pretending they had never existed. But the Amish kept that knowledge alive without a single government handout. They watched their neighbor's soil turn to powder after 10 years of anhydrous ammonia and never once reached for the tank. And you do not need 100 acres or a horse-drawn plow to do what they do. A 1/4 acre, a shovel, a few dollars in seed, and the will to stop renting your fertility from a corporation. Now, if you want the exact schedule, the exact seeding rates, and the one compost mistake that ruins an entire batch, I put it in a simple guide. But there is one more piece to the Amish system, something they add that no extension agent will ever mention, and it might be the cheapest fertility hack on earth. I will show you that next. The missing piece? That's for the next video. Because once you see it, you'll understand why no chemical company ever mentions it. But the takeaway is already clear. For 10,000 years, 4 inputs built every fertile soil on Earth: cover crops, manure, compost, and wood ash. The Amish never surrendered them. They held the line while the rest of farming switched to the tank. Now you know the rotation, the science, and the history. The knowledge is not lost anymore. It's sitting in your hands. If you want the exact schedule, the seeding rates, and the one compost mistake that ruins an entire batch, I put it in a link below. But if you are the kind of person who wants to stop renting fertility from a corporation and start building it the way civilizations always did, hit subscribe. There's a lot more coming, and I'll show you that final piece very soon.